This is an oral history interview for the Institute for Latino Studies at the University of Notre Dame. Today is Tuesday, March 11th, 2008, and I'm here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with artist Reynaldo Hernandez. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for agreeing to participate in our program. And we usually start the interviews, my name is Tracy Grimm, and we usually start the interviews with asking you to state your full name, date, and place of birth. And then if you could just talk a little bit about your background and where you were born and how you got interested in the arts.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. My name is Reynaldo Hernandez. I never liked my middle name because in English it means Alvin. I always remember me Alvin and Chipmunks. So that's my name. My mother gave me that name.
Stuck with
I
it.
was born January 15th, 1950. It's a nice even date, 50. So I never forget when I was born. Same date as Martin Luther King. So I always said he stole my birthday, but I think he's older. But that's when I was born. And my father, his name is Ruben Alejandro Hernandez, and his father was a Spaniard from Spain. There's controversy. People that know him say he was born in Mexico. Some say he said he was born in St. Francis in Milwaukee. I was born here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My father is, I don't know exactly where he was born. My mother is Catherine Hernandez. She's of African American and Native American, half Creek Indian, half African American. It's on her birth certificate. And my Native American artists say that she was Seminole, which is from Florida. But I did the history on Seminole Indians, and that's really not a Native American nation. It's an American given name. They were really Creek Indians so that's what my mother is, Creek Indian. But she also was very fluent in Spanish, and she was a Spanish translator at View School here in Milwaukee.
So did she grow up in Milwaukee?
She grew up, she was born in Iowa.
In Iowa.
Her grandmother, her mother, they were from down south. That's where the Creek Indian came from move up to the Midwest. And my father met her. They grew up here in Milwaukee. Back in the days, most minorities lived in certain pockets in Milwaukee. That's where they grew up, met each other. He went to the Navy. While he was in the Navy, all his records of his relatives in Mexico were thrown out by his relatives here in Milwaukee. When he came back, the whole chest was gone. He was an orphan. So I know very little. I know one of his uncles is a bullfighter, so I know some history. But his mother died when he was young. He was partly raised up by a German. He spoke German for a while because he was raised by Germans and Indian, Native American. So he had a storied history. He fought in Guam during World War II. Got injured there. He was real strict disciplinarian from the military. So he had us like all our family was real rigid.
Well, like clockwork.
Yeah, my mother was very loving, very outgoing, so almost like opposites. He was a quiet person. That's where I get some of that from. I was drawing, my mother said, since I was little. I was drawing before I went to school in the projects, and then when I got a scholarship to the Milwaukee Art Museum when I was in elementary school, and she said the teachers just let me draw because I was advanced. And then when I went to middle school, I was a school cartoonist. And I went to Boys Technical High School, Milwaukee Boys Technical High School, and I took commercial art as a major, as a trade. So we had like 4 hours of art a day, commercial art, and that's where I learned most of my art, the technical. So you get exposed to silk screening and stipple, different techniques, and took photography in high school, and also took printing. So from early on, I knew that to make a living in art, I was geared towards commercial art. So I learned how to prepare art for printing. So I was a school cartoonist at Tech. And then after that, I worked in a printing company. Then I worked at Channel 4, talked my way in, using my portfolio and my samples. So I was the only artist in the station that wasn't really a college graduate. So the strength of my work got me in. And I always thought it was good to see that people apply for my job while I was working there. And I still held on to it. While I was at Channel 4, I did the work that was before computers. We did work for them slides for the commercials for the TV. We did TV guide ads, print ads. We did the commercial work. We worked for the radio station, worked for the TV station. I also did courtroom sketching. So I was pulled off from the art department, went with the news department to the federal court and local court and drew trials, and then they put my work on television because later on they let cameras into local court, so a lot of that work was done. So I still work federal court. They won't let cameras in Wisconsin. So then I got to fly around the United States in planes to Canada and northern Wisconsin for different trials. It was pretty exciting at times. Also, I got to learn the justice system in the United States and how the lawyers work and how they were in collusion with each other and they suppress evidence. I got to see the inside stories of some of these trials. It's pretty interesting. But I stay neutral because when I draw, you get to meet the families of both sides, the prosecution and the ones that are on trial.
It's never simple.
You get to get close to them, yeah, and they're all together. It's sometimes like a circus. They pat you down. You can't have cell phones. It's pretty interesting. It's an interesting life. From that, I got into, after Channel 4, I felt like I was in prison. Our art studio was in the basement, and we worked for other people. And I said, there's got to be more to life than this.
Were you doing murals at the same time, or was this before you kind of started?
I did the mural in my brother's house. He rented downstairs from my parents. And he had a party. I did a mural of Sophia Loren with black and white house paint. And we painted over the window shade, pulled it down, did her hair. That was done in 6 hours, so I knew I could do it. But I also was interested in history. Read a lot. My mother taught us to read from infancy, and that's where knowledge comes from. So I was really interested in the Mexican muralists, los tres grandes, like Rivera, Orozco. So I figured there was more to life than just working for somebody else. I wanted to give back to community. So in 1982, I left freelance on my own. And then I did a mural. So you have to start out to get exposure. Muralists back in those days almost would give their work away or do a mural or start out just to get their mural out in the public. So that's what I did. And from there, the city saw it in social agencies. And the second mural I did was on the south side of Milwaukee. And that was...
What year was that?
That was in 1980, I don't know, early 80s, 83, I think. It was on 2 retaining walls owned by the city, and the land was owned by the county, and so we got grants, multiple grants to get the mural done. And the city said if I did a mural, it had to be of social concern, so I used racism, showed 2 little kids cooperating. I try to show positive murals. And I had to have police protection at night because people on the south side didn't want to have a black image on the walls, and told me get the nigger off the wall. There's a lot of racism you see just from exposure. Very little, but there's still enough. They put swastikas on the mural, and then at night the city came and washed it off because that was when there was a lot of racial tension springing up at that time. So that's what happens when you do murals. There's a lot of you're doing. To me, it's like performance art. You're not only painting, but you get comments from people walking by. A lot of times I have regular people in the area paint on it, youth, police officers, whoever wants to put a little hand into it can do some of the work, so they have ownership of it. Then later on, we got grants in the early 80s from the city of Milwaukee. Artists were hired to do work with rival gangs using art. So you start feeling like Dirty Harry in Clint Eastwood movies. Every little dirty job they called him. Well, they kind of like used artists for social concerns, like rival gangs, and that's what I did. So I have it all documented, the process. And part of the thing is these kids are not really like monsters like some people. They're just a lot of them have very good talent. They're just not directing it in the right direction. Social skills have to be like maybe developed more. Their artistic skills are there. And then needing a mentor, somebody to work with them, show them how it's done, and somebody give them time, really.
So there were a whole series of murals. Beginning of
I did the
80s.
ones on at least then I branched out doing murals in other cities in Wisconsin, like Madison, Racine, Kenosha, way up north, like in Wisconsin Rapids. And they would tell me, you don't want to do murals up there because they don't like people of color up there, and they killed Africans up there. And you hear all these stories trying to scare you. And that's what I heard from Kenosha, from the last mural. I go up there anyway, and you do get stares, and people look at you. But once you get media, newspaper coverage in the newspaper, things change around.
Yeah.
United States is funny.
Yeah.
As long as you're a hero or somebody that's like a figure that's popular, then they'll embrace you, like Michael Jordan or somebody. So same way with me. Then I got people waving at me.
Celebrity.
Yeah, so it's funny.
Don't let that power go to your head.
So no, I don't. But I know how to work it. You do your job. You go back. You
Right.
don't make waves. Stay out of taverns, 'cause that's what happened to those Africans. They went in taverns and started. People. Well, that's a different story.
Yeah. When you would go into the communities, would you work with the school kids, or just would it be how would you interact with the community?
Depends on where the grant would come from. If it's working with a school, the money would come from. A lot of the school murals came from grants from the Wisconsin Arts Board in Madison, which got their money from the National Endowment of the Arts, and then they give monies to each state. Wisconsin's pretty low on the money allocations, but they wanted to give money so that people in the state of Wisconsin in the rural areas would have exposure to art that couldn't go to like the big cities and go to the galleries or the theater. And so they would have musicians and artists and visual artists and dancers do residencies. And then there are certain cities like Kenosha and Racine that the city itself would sponsor the art because of gang problems or the social problem, the dirty, hairy thing. So I go there and work with different gangs, and we have to work with different ethnic groups together, and there would be like fights, baseball bats. I got a lot of stories. I got threatened, hit. You get all kinds of. This is a violent society, and it spills over with the youth.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even had to hire like a guy for like a bodyguard for some of these rival gangs.
Oh, yeah.
But then it's all documented. I have documentation of how art can really make changes in people.
Yeah.
Because art is universal. Then I worked in nursing homes, from youth to older people, and have them working in their 80s and 90s. I've had grants to work in prisons, in jails, trying to teach art. Sometimes you can't really teach it because the audience, their attention span is slow, so I just draw their characters and show them how to do certain things, and then let them draw. But I tell them they can't have anything obscene, no gang things. And at times I went to like correctional institutions, even had my daughters go there. I schooled to tell these guys, don't be swearing up, don't hit on my daughter, don't swear at her, keep your language down. And it worked pretty good, these guys.
Respect.
Yeah, they respected it. They would have like police patrolling around trying to protect you. At times there was no protection. So you really can't show fear, almost like you just do your job. It worked pretty good. Still here.
How could you talk a little bit about your influences, like how you are, who were your influences when you were being formed as an artist? Or?
When I grew up in my early teens and 20s, in school you had to learn about European art. I never really cared about the old masters and what their lives were. Now I do, because I read their lives. I'm their age, and you can see how they started getting bumped off in their 50s, or they self-destruct in those days, or they had mental problems. So, but back then I really cared more of contemporary artists, who were the airbrush artists, more of the guys that did modern stuff. That's what I liked. And that's what I really read about. In fact, one of my, Mark Drucker, who used to draw characters in Mad Magazine, all the movies like The Godfather, and they looked just like him. He was like a guy I really admired. And I used to study his work. Now I'm a character artist and doing what he does. And my daughters, most of my children went to the same technical school I went to and took commercial art. I didn't really force them, but when they were young, I gave them art materials, the best art materials and paints, and let them express themselves artistically instead of letting them watch TV or they didn't buy any video games, none of that stuff. So they were trained in arts. And most of them we work together professionally as character artists for corporations, and we have agents that hire us. Now I'm working on cruise ships So I go and do caricatures as cruise ship entertainment. Get a real big discount, get to see the world. I got to go to the Vatican, see the art museum, and get to see the Sistine Chapel, go to Rome. There is some benefits. Monetarily, it's been a struggle working for yourself. It's ups and downs. I work from job to job, and sometimes there's lean months when jobs are slow, and then it builds up. So you have to have a tough skin. You have to do more than one type of art, especially in the Midwest. So I do murals, and I do caricatures, do character jobs throughout the state and travel, do courtroom sketching. Now you have to embrace new technology, like the internet, the web, World Wide Web, as a means. So I try fighting that, but you have to give in and embrace it. That's what I'm doing now. So there's a lot to learn. Yeah. I'm getting older, but even like doing murals, you have to like exercise, stay in shape. It's real physical. You're exposed to the sun, and you have to climb up scaffolding, which is pretty dangerous. And it's interesting. So I wanted to really have a lot of information on murals and mural art. I'm trying to work on having a location for like a museum, not just in my work, but other artists' work in the state, the city, and the Midwest. So the youth can come, and bus tours and schools can come and see the importance of working and doing art, not selfishly. Mural art is more, it's not like a museum or gallery where things are enclosed and framed and hung on a wall and only the elitist people. That's where it came from. People broke away, and you see that the history goes South America, Africa, all over the world, where people just do the art. In South America, they used to paint for survival when they had like revolutions and violence, or their villages were wiped out. They put the slain up on walls as a memorial. There's a history of that. And so even in the United States, it was a matter of showing the concerns that people had. If people of color didn't have access to the media, like radio and TV, to show their concerns, so they went to protests, and part of the protest was mural art on the floor, on the walls, on the buildings, documenting their heroes, like the Wall of Respect. And also in California with the Huelga, with Sister Chavez and that kind of thing. So that's where the modern movement came out. Now it's just like right now. The history, the concerns are not really that apparent, because mural art is more decorative now.
Do you see that it's changed?
Yeah, it's changed to me. The urgency is not there like it used to be. Not in the big cities.
Right.
And
yes, it probably parallels the social conditions.
Yep. Then people like graffiti artists, or the young, they'll do their own thing and come out to it. So I work with a lot of graffiti artists. A lot of those graffiti artists from New York in the past, they're gallery artists now. They'll do their work on canvases and see that they can sell it and be in galleries. And it's the same with murals. They can see that their work, and also they can be trained, and they can make pieces that are really of relevance through murals.
Could you talk a little bit about when we met the first time last fall? You had mentioned about a group that was in Milwaukee before the United Community Center that would get together, and artists. Could you talk a little bit about? I know you were involved.
Yeah, it was called the Hispanic Art Skill. Before that, it was called the Midwest Artist Guild. That was predominantly. See, my heritage is Hispanic and African American, Native American, so I don't feel I can be pigeonholed into one category. So where art is art.
Right.
So that was predominantly African American. The main artists, most of the artists from the Midwest Art Guild are in Atlanta now, doing real good. We're doing work for Coca-Cola and the big corporations. So we started that to help the youth, the other artists. There still needs to be role models and mentors for these kids. So we started the Hispanic Arts Council.
What year was that?
That was in the 1980s, early 80s, middle 80s, and it was with we partnered with independently with UWM, University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, and we also had it was founded by Michael Reyes, who was a musician, and he was also an educator in music. He knows the history of Latin music all the way back to the 20s of the inception, African and Cuban, and so he was in it, and it was visual artists, dancers. So we met as professionals together, We started the guild, and then after we had it going, the purpose was to hand it over to the youth. So they would learn from us how to work it. We had minutes and bylaws, and it worked for a while, but then the youth were distracted with doing their own thing. So that's why it died, because we didn't have enough interest to pass it on to.
Who else was involved? Who else was in the group?
It was mainly those type of professionals. And it was meaning to bring the arts, bring it into Milwaukee. Like a lot of like musicians, major musicians, they would come and they would go to Chicago and perform. Through the Arts Council, we would get those artists to come to Milwaukee after they did the gig in Chicago, to come up here and perform up here. Mm-hmm. And we also did, we tried to cross-culture the different Mexican, Puerto Rican, South American. We're all the same language but different locations, but there shouldn't be no need to for this nationalism so strong that we can work together. Right. So now we have there's a Latin Fest now. There's things that sprung up from it, but independently, but it was the impetus to really bring, and we had festivals in the parks, in Milwaukee parks. We had huge crowds. Mm-hmm. We had art exhibits starting. That's what that was.
Mm-hmm. And you were the president of that for a while?
Well, I was elected. I don't know. I think the same with the other one.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it was Oscar Mireles, who was a poet. He did a book on, I didn't know there was Latinos in Wisconsin, showing how, that's what people say when they go on cruise ships. You have to tell them that, where's Milwaukee? You have to say, cerca de Chicago, close to Chicago. Oh, then they get an idea, because they never heard of. And if they do hear Milwaukee, they think it's the beer and brats and German mugs.
Cheese.
Yeah, they don't think there's Latins here, not that many African Americans, except the people here do know. But I'm talking about internationally, the image. Mm-hmm. So that's what that was.
Anything else? Anything I haven't asked you about?
About the arts.
About the arts.
Back in the 60s, there used to be co-op arts here, just like in other parts. We used to have artists. We used to get together and get our own storefront, have our the People's Gallery. Uh-huh. And mainly the forerunners were the black artists. That's why we started Hispanic Arts Council. And then there was the Milwaukee Inner City Arts Council on the north side, which is predominantly an African American area. And I used to work there, and I used to say, well, it should really be for everybody in the inner city here. Even if you're like a little white kid, you should be able to come there and learn the arts. We taught figure drawing and dancing, and we had dance classes, art classes there. We had a slide registry. Now it's no longer, there's a void there. It's been disbanded for years. Then UCC on the south side grew from a little boxing spot, and now it's huge because they have a good direction, a good visionary, Dr. Sava. He could see things, how it could be in the future, and I worked towards it. Now there's a gallery. I used to work down there. So I would work independently just to bring the arts. Mm-hmm. Arts is arts, and that's why I work in different avenues, not only for the money, but also to get exposure to kids, like in the prison system.
And the United Community Center, does that serve just a section of the city, or is it really citywide? Or?
It serves mainly the south side, because that's where it's located.
Yeah.
But when I was in Inner City Arts on the north side, I was saying we should network with UCC on the south side. So if there's exhibits going on there, we should know about it on the north side, because on the northeast side of Milwaukee, on this side of town, there's predominantly an area of Puerto Ricans. So why shouldn't they know what's going on the south side UCC? If they don't go there already. That's what I was trying to do. And then there's the west side, which is on the west side of Milwaukee, and there's less art. East side of Milwaukee is where they have a lot of art galleries, mainstream. So that was just trying to mix it up so everybody can see what's going on. We should all cross-culture. Right. That's what they call it. Where you don't have to be of that culture, but you can learn it. You can like the food, learn the culture, like the garb, the music, the language, and be part of it. And even though you're not born into it, you should have that right. Mm-hmm. And they used to have nationwide. I used to go to Boston for cross-culture conventions where I tried to promote that. Mm-hmm. Back that was back. Things were, the 70s were a good period for me. That's when artists really had an opportunity to be creative, not only with the music, but also with the album cover art. You had the 12 by 12 inch, and it was large, and you had like the Art on Santana album covers, and you had artists that could get exposure doing that. But then they would do the album cover, and then the record company, just like they would rip off the musicians, they would pay you for the album cover, then they'd be using your artwork for big posters and use it in backdrop for the concert, and you wouldn't get anything. So then we started learning about law. So I spent years learning, copyright law, trademark law, licensing, those kind of things. And so that's what artists have to learn, really, the business of art too. Otherwise, you get taken advantage of, and how galleries take such a huge percent. And you should learn all those things.
Cross culture, was that a formal?
Yeah, it was some kind. I got the records of it. Yeah, they had. They even came to Milwaukee and had a showcase, and we had like workshops on how to live and work together and share our different cultures, how to support each other. And we had tours of the city that the convention was in, and you had performances for different groups. It's very nice.
So it was a national group.
Yeah, still around. I'll have to dig in my archives and get the name for you.
Okay.
So there are things going around, but then how do you know that if you don't see? I read a lot. Like I told you, my mother taught me how to read, so I subscribe to a lot of things on the West Coast. Like there used to be a community arts magazine from San Francisco, and everything nationwide happened to Murals was in there. I subscribed to that, and there was things going on in New York. I subscribed to theirs, like in Foco and different magazines from New York that would go on ethnically. And I would know what's going on. So you can live like, I figure I live in little Milwaukee, but I know what's going on nationally, and then network with those guys. That's how you survive and really grow. And then I would find out what exhibits are going on and enter different contests, not only here in Wisconsin, but outside there mainly.
Yeah. Is there anyone that stands out, or people that you were be in contact with, like on the West Coast, or New York, groups?
Yeah, there was a guy named, his name was Tim Drescher. He would go across the United States and document murals and have books on murals in the United States. And I learned from him. I would go and take slides of different cities and from different sources, and I would give presentations and show how the murals in the East, like in New York at the time, like in the early 70s, there wasn't a lot of landscaping. If you look at the city, there was a lot of steel and brown and concrete, and they used big, like super graphics on buildings to really bring color into the city. That was their concern. Midwest had a different concern. Down south, it was different. You could see little changes on the West Coast.
Can you talk a little bit about it?
Well, it was just some of them were decorative, and you would see like those murals, like a Volkswagen shop, and they would have like a big, like a cave, and have like the cars driving into it, like a trompe l'oeil kind of art. And they would have murals on buildings and show like the guy meeting a girl, and he looked through the windows, go across, and he would like meet with her, and you see like a whole story. That was kind of like fun. Then you have murals like in Chicago, where you have like the Wall of Respect, and you have Chicano, like more pride of race or survival, show that we're here, we belong, we mean something, that kind of mural. And then they would be like gang murals. Somebody would die, they would put that person on there. So it was different reasons why people did murals.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the Midwest is unique in any way, like in how the mural movement developed here? Or
there was riots in Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, a lot of big riots from the civil rights in the Midwest, and those murals showed that concern. And they're not around right now, but they're really part of the history of the civil rights movement. Same with in California, it's the same thing also. So those kind of murals are gone now. There used to be war protests like Vietnam. There'd be murals for that because you could just go on a corner and access it and paint it. So in a way, we're kind of like cousins to graffiti artists in a way, but not exactly. So I was trained in commercial art, so my work is more polished than you would see graffiti, and I try to show a positive. There's a lot of negativity. Like I did like murals on drugs. I wouldn't show the skull with the headband and shooting up the needle and say, don't take drugs. Instead, we did positive things. Working with youth, they would say, well, we got to show the negative before we show the positive. That's their mural, so we would do it. Mm-hmm. And it worked.
But always
we show the end, right. Or using, looking out into the future, using symbols to show the hope in the future. Just like the mural I did for Esperanza Unida on 6th and National Milwaukee, the largest one in Wisconsin. It shows eagle and dove. And it shows the olive branch in the eagle's mouth, but also shows lightning coming out, because there's peace in the world, but there's also tension. So that shows it. So you can use symbols to show things.
Right. You mentioned earlier when we were talking that you opened a gallery at some point, or could...
Yeah, it was on the west side. It was with someone I met at Channel 4 that worked there.
What was the gallery called?
It was called Missouri because it was really her gallery, and I helped set it up. Yeah, it was I think it was an African name, Swahili. It worked pretty good for a while. We had openings. And then after a while, she upped and left and went to Atlanta, moved.
Everybody going.
And owed me money.
Oh, no.
And so it didn't end good. And years later, I saw her at the airport. So you have to bury that.
Yeah.
But I still told her she owed me.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, but you got to try. You want to go through life and say, I should have done this, and never at least try it. Even if you take a loss, but at least you did it. And you learn, you get experience. At least you learn how things are done. Mm-hmm. And you also learn how to network, meet other people. And for a while, I tried to do things and be quiet. You can be an artist and work on your own, but if you don't, you have to have other people help you. Know what you're doing, give you exposure, give you a little helping hand, give you a network. So you have to do that. And then you read all different things about artists are crazy and this and that. And that's not true. It is true, but it's not all the way true. We're individuals. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
But this is good that there's a history done of the arts, of people that are not really world famous, because to really make a living full time, it's like less than 1% of 1%. It's real small. There's people that make it. Those are the ones you hear about all the time. But you don't hear about all the other thousands of people that really are artists or trying to be artists or aspire to be artists. To me, everyone's an artist. You learn how to draw before you learn how to write and do the alphabet. You're drawing pictures. Just that after a while you get discouraged, or a teacher tells you your stuff is junk. So you get kids like that, and they never want to pick up a brush or pencil again. And then you have to persevere.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about?
Anything else?
Anything else?
No, but not really. We just have to keep encouraging one another.
Yeah.
And it's good to travel. You see that.
It sounds like you've traveled.
Yeah, I'm traveling a lot more, just through circumstance. But you really get. I remember when I was little, things you saw in the books we learned, they seemed like they were in another planet. Now we have, the world has shrunk. It's smaller, so you may as well access it and take advantage of. But you do have to be careful now. I did a layover in Frankfurt, Germany, and I was on the subway, and it was packed, me and my wife, and this guy, this German, he looked at me and he said, "You're American, right?" He said, "I hate Americans."
You gotta say you're Canadian. That's what I always do.
Oh, yeah? He said, everybody in this train hates Americans. And I was like, oh, no, they're going to jump me. So after he got off, we talked, found out what his problem was. He was mad at, he was German, but he was Muslim, and he wanted to know why they had to kill Saddam's sons and, that kind of thing in Iraq. And I told him everybody in America doesn't think the same way the government does. The difference between the people here. I had to explain it to him, explain why things are the way they are, and I want to know when things are going to change. And I told him that the Bible says things are going to get better, and we're living in the last days, and these things are going to happen. He was calmed down at the end, but you'd have to watch when you travel, though.
It's baggage.
Yeah, things get, yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much.
All right, thank you.
For this interview.
All right, you're welcome.